All right, so let's discuss the resumption of the Sisonke trial now with Professor Barry Schoub, virologist and chair of the Ministerial Advisory Committee on COVID-19 vaccines. Good evening, Professor. So, according to Mia Milan, we've probably lost about 140,000 over the last 2 weeks in that delay. Do you think we can catch up quickly?
I hope we can. You know, it is unfortunate we had to do the pause. It was really part of the kind of regulations built into the Sisonke program. So it was unfortunate, but I hope with an accelerated push, and the minister has really, I guess, given an undertaking that we will try and finish the Sisonke trial by the 16th of May, because that's when the phase 2 will be starting on the 17th of May. Whether we can do that, I really sincerely hope we can.
So my understanding is that the Sisonke trial is Johnson & Johnson's alone, and that is for about 500,000 healthcare workers. But the remainder of the healthcare workers, and I understand it's at least 500,000, they will be vaccinated with the Pfizer jab when it arrives. Is that correct? Well,
no, it'll be both. You know, the Sisonke program had vaccine donated by Sisonke, by Johnson & Johnson for the implementation study. Mm-hmm. But there is 1.1 million doses which will be coming off the plants at Gqeberha very soon. Apparently, it's ready for dispatch. In fact, that still has to go to the National Control Laboratory to just to have the final standardization tests, and then that will be available as well. So it's probably going to be a combination of the Pfizer, and there are 650,000 doses of Pfizer which are supposed to be coming for the 17th of May. So it'll be a combination of both those.
All right. So am I right that we're not going to inoculate all our healthcare workers by the 17th of May, and there's going to be some overlap?
You know, Sally, I'm sure there will be some overlap. I think the aim is to finish before the 17th of May with phase one of the healthcare workers, but I think it's probably unrealistic. It'll probably flow into the rest of May because of as you mentioned, that 140,000 deficit we have to catch up on.
Yeah. So let's talk about the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. My understanding is that there isn't a conclusive link proven yet, but still, being very careful, anyone who has a potential risk of blood clotting will be excluded from this vaccine. What would exclude someone from being given the J&J vaccine?
Well, yeah, as you say, I think somebody that has had a propensity or a history or a clinical history, medical history of a tendency to form thrombi or clotting, I think they should be excluded from the Johnson & Johnson trial. But I think or vaccine, I think anybody else, the risk is really extremely low. The risk is, 1 in a million. At this stage, we are also excluding pregnant and lactating women, really as a precaution. It's not that there is an increased risk in pregnancy, and there's been many studies that have shown that there is apparently no risk whatsoever. But I think it is a precaution because of the kind of very low risk of clotting.
So bearing in mind that, let's say you're a healthcare worker and you're hoping to get your vaccine as soon as possible, but you have a history of blood clots, does that mean you will have to wait for the Pfizer jabs to arrive mid-May, or can you say, look, I think the risk is minimal, I'm happy to have the Johnson & Johnson vaccine?
Yeah, I think this really has to be discussed, you know, with a full clinical history. What is the history? How deep is that propensity for clotting? I think it's really an individual decision. But clearly, if the medical advisor of that person does feel there is a significant risk of clotting, they should really wait for the Pfizer. The Pfizer hopefully is not going to be the middle of May. Hopefully there some doses which will come before then.
All right, so we know that phase 2 is due to start on May the 17th. That's for the 60-plus group, and there's about 5.5 million South Africans who will qualify under that category. We know that just around 10% have registered so far. You said that there's likely to be an overlap between this trial with the healthcare workers and phase 2. Do you think that we're going to have enough ramped up capacity and vaccination sites that we don't have a bottleneck with the last of the healthcare workers and the first of the elderly getting their jabs?
So I don't think there will be a bottleneck. You know, they're saying like 2,000 odd sites planned for phase 2. There's an expansion of even phase 1 site to 93, but I think that there may well not be an overlap of those sites themselves. And we're not, as a vaccine MAC, not involved actually with that administration, but that's my understanding, that there won't be that overlap in terms of the actual sites will overlap. I think there's an overlap in the distribution of the vaccines. I
see, I understand. Talk to us about phase 2. Age, of course, is the biggest risk factor, which is why phase 2 starts with those who are 60 plus. After that, is it going to be those with comorbidities?
Yes, there are 3 main groups. The one is, by far the most important is age. That seems to be the most predictor of severe disease and death, in fact. So that's really the main criteria for phase 2. After that, as you say, does come the comorbidities, and they are ranked in terms of the severity of comorbidities. There's actually a scoring system for that. And then thirdly, there's a group of what you call the congregate individuals that are on congregate settings, where epidemiologically there's likely to be extensive spread. Actually, there's a 4th one, of course, and that's the key personnel. And there's a list of who are key personnel in terms of running the country.
You know, we're watching India at the moment because what is happening in India is an absolute nightmare. Yeah. And one of the something a doctor said to my colleague yesterday is that COVID-19 is very different to COVID 2021, which speaks, of course, to how this virus has mutated. How concerned are you that our vaccinations are not going to keep up with the variants? Or do you think that the vaccines are broad enough to contain most of these variants at this stage?
Yeah, look, we've been limited to which vaccines we can use where they've been proven or there's very, very strong scientific reasons to believe, and that's given us the assurance that these particular vaccines will be effective against our B1531 variant. And that's the Pfizer vaccine and the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. And that was the reason why we couldn't go with the AstraZeneca vaccine early in the year. So I think we are confident that it will be effective against the 351. There is good news, though, and that's work done at various laboratories in South Africa, where they've shown that if there's immunity to the variant you're talking about, the 351 variant, the dominant one in this country, it actually protects against other variants as well. So we may well, with these vaccines, be able to protect against a variety of variants. If there will be variants which evolve beyond that, I think it's unlikely from a virological point of view, but of course it is a possibility. This is a very unpredictable virus, but hopefully the 351 immunity will protect against variants as they arise. This is what we're hoping for.
And just a point of clarity, I hear lots of scientists talking about the 351 variant. Am I correct that that is, of course, the 501YV2? And if so, why do we have 2 different names for it?
Sally, yeah, you know, there's actually a little committee in the WHO which is trying to standardize because they're now, you know, these numbers are confusing. People tend to forget them. Yeah, 501YV2 is identical. It's the same name as B1351. It's a variant dominant in South Africa, first found in South Africa.